clerics and the laity, there was a big gulf. We see it with everybody. The clerics have been elevated, and the people have helped elevate them. Oh, my pastor's the greatest pastor. You know, they put him on a stand. He could do no wrong. Oh, wait a minute, people. He's still a human being. He could stumble or fall just like anybody else. By the grace of God, he's in a position teaching you. But don't put him on no pedestal, because if he don't get himself off, God might knock that pedestal out, and you'll find out just how human he really is. Okay? So there's become a great gulf. The pastors that believe their own press. Hey, look at me. I'm somebody cool. You know, I'm on TV. You know? That's opening a door for a fall. You know? And so they see the intercessors, you lowly grunts, take care of the dirty work. Pray for me. Don't forget to hold me up because I'm somebody important. There needs to be a relationship between them, that there's no gulf. There's no levels of different levels. That we are in this thing together. We're all in the same boat. Unless you're sitting on the seat and I'm sitting on the floor, there's no difference in levels. Okay? Joe, you had a question, comment, concern, something.
You did say it was open for that, right?
Yes, I did.
Behave yourself.
You know, remember what Jesus said, where he said, those born of the Spirit are spirit, and those born of the flesh are flesh.
Right.
The reality of it is, I think that, especially with a lot of people, like in leadership, you know, in the churches and stuff, they get to that place where they're so esteemed to where they can do no wrong. They're in a place of destruction because they turn their back on the reality of the adversary that is within their flesh.
That's right.
And they are in for trouble. You cannot turn your back on that adversary because it'll slay them, you know.
It will destroy you.
And the reality of it is that so many Christians, especially like in my family, they just don't see the reality that when you're born again, you're born in your spirit. But this body of flesh was still born of the flesh. There's two natures, you know, and there's so many people that disregard that, you know. And it's just, no matter how close we grow in the Lord and our spirit, we still have an adversary that's already born in the flesh. Until we're gone from here, you know.
Paul said, he says, the things I would do, I do not. Things I would not do, I do. You know, there's a war going on. You know, there's a war of the flesh. You know, he says, what is flesh and Belial have in common? Absolutely nothing. You know, we have to be careful. This is why he tells us to walk in the Spirit and not in the flesh. He said, if you walk in the Spirit, you'll not fulfill the lust of the flesh. So it's one thing to go around saying, well, I got the goosebumps at church last week and I'm walking in the Spirit. That is not walking in the Spirit. You know? And it's another thing to go to church and get the goosebumps and run out and live like the devil all week. That's not walking in the flesh either, or the Spirit. That's trying to live both lives. You're in between, and you're going to find out you're going to have a hard time and a hard road to haul. You can't serve sin and serve God and find true happiness and joy. You're going to be miserable. Some Christians have just enough religion to be miserable, you know, and that's their problem. They got religion. And we're not supposed to have religion. We're supposed to have a relationship.
Amen.
You know? They got the wrong R, you know? It says here that the antidote is to let the senior leader appreciate, communicate, and support his intercessors and esteem their contribution, and let the intercessors set their prayer focus to first seek the spiritual fulfillment of the senior pastor's vision. The church vision really needs to come from the founding pastor. And you see that what happens is when a church is started and maybe the pastor moves on and another pastor takes his place, they still carry on that vision of their pastor that founded that church. And what's happening is we got too many visions floating around. And so this is an open door for the spirits to begin to manipulate work. So what happens is you see that Jezebel comes into a prayer group and starts, here's how she works. She comes into a prayer group, she says, oh, Pastor, I'll get in there and pray with the people because God has given me a call to prayer. And so next thing you know, they're in there praying, and they may take the lead and pray out loud. Oh, God, help our pastor. We know that he's weak. It sounds good, but they just planting seeds. I know that you gave him a vision, but Lord, I hear you telling me today that you're leading us in yet a different direction. Help him to hear with ears that are from heaven. They're just planting some seeds of doubt, changing, altering the vision. If the pastor's going to watch in there, he needs to be watching his prayer people, because Jezebels love to get in there. They love to manipulate, they love to control. Jezebel's spirit will continue to attack the leadership wherever it involves temptation, confusion, witchcraft, fear, or discouragement. It always has its ultimate purpose is to disable spiritual leadership. In other words, the Jezebel wants to stop the mouth of the prophet. Kill the prophet. And that way you silence the word. Also, you silence and kill off the ability of being exposed. Once they get in control, how do they get in control? Through manipulation, through working back and forth with their own agenda. Any questions? Yes.
Well, if you look at the reality of that, that agenda, the Jezebel, it really shows, because that's her agenda, it really shows that she understands how God works with his ambassadors. Yes. Why would it be so important to shut the mouth of the prophet? Why, it really shows that she understands that, yeah, God's capable of just tearing open this heaven and just speaking himself down here with his own voice, all the way from heaven.
Yeah.
But she recognizes that that's the way God works. He sent his ambassadors, his people, to speak what he has to say from his heart. And so because she recognizes the importance of the ambassadors and realizes that, or works in that strategy to shut their mouths so that the word of God won't go out. Well, it's the same thing like what you were talking about with the prayer intercession. That's why that is such an important work that has to be done against the spirit, because as ambassadors, we really are here, to have that in that. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I guess, as you keep saying that with the her wanting to close the mouth of the prophet,
right.
It really shows that she understands the importance of God's people in that aspect,
And she understands leadership. She understands authority, and she's brazen enough that she's not afraid to challenge authority. And you'll see a pattern working with people that carry Jezebel's spirit. Always have these certain little patterns. I don't care if they're working in the kitchen, or if they're cleaning the church, or if they're teaching a class, or if they're in the midst of a prayer, or if they're just to go for doing everything. They are eager to get in to do it, for one. Second of all, they build themselves up that nobody can do this as well as I can. And if somebody else gets praised for doing something, all of a sudden you start seeing them pushing them off at arm's length and saying, you know what, that person's okay, but you know what? And they start fault finding. They start planting seeds of doubt in your mind. They start beginning to deteriorate the credibility of that person. Whether it's the pastor, their main goal is to get the position of the leadership to head, the pastor's position, okay? They want to have that pastor as a puppet. But if they can't do that, they will be content for a period of time to work on those aside. So what happens is they start to single people out. We talked about this before, how they begin to single somebody out. And they won't come out and say this, but they'll say to themselves, I can use this person to help benefit my cause. And next thing you know, they're buttering up to this person, and this person feeling like, wow, it's really nice that this important person really thinks that I'm somebody special. And they just stroke their ego and just keep on, and they're using them, and when they get to where they don't need them anymore, they cast them aside. So now you got somebody devastated, laying over here hurting, because this person had its agenda and used you as a stepping stone. Does that make sense to you? So what you'll see is you'll see this pattern. No matter whatever they're doing, they will begin to start off by declaring themselves very capable. I'm the one. I'm the one. You need me. If you don't know what gift it is that you have, they won't come out saying those words, but this is the impression they're giving you. You don't know the gift that you have by God sending me here. I'm able to do this, and they will begin to elevate themselves. And then they'll begin to start putting down somebody else. They'll begin to very subtly start to put somebody else down. And if the program is going in a certain direction and they don't like it, they'll begin to discredit it. We had it here in our church. We had here where we had a Jezebel come in, and the women's meeting was going in a certain direction. And all of a sudden, the Jezebel says, "This isn't a real women's meeting in the first place. This isn't even right." You know, and what it was is it was beginning to very subtly discredit it. Same pattern as you see in the prayer meetings. They may not come out and sit there and talk to everybody, but when they pray, they may pray the prayer that discredits somebody. And or they'll come in and use it as a prayer request. We need to pray for so-and-so because so-and-so's out doing this, that, and the other. What they're doing is they're just nullifying that person's witness to make themselves build up, okay? The Jezebel will begin to manipulate. And she'll manipulate through tears. If it's going to benefit her. We talked about this girl I knew that could just turn the tears on. She'd be talking to you, smiling like this, and 2 seconds later, woo-hoo-hoo, the tears would be flowing, and you couldn't stop them. And I just sit there and shake my head and say, how can the human body go from a smile to floodgates open without even a stop? I mean, she'd be talking and not miss a beat. And you don't know, you don't know. I mean, I thought, that's just amazing to me. But that's what they do. They'll always have a victim mentality when it comes to circumstances or problems. They'll stir up a mess and then say, I don't know why everybody's picking on me. I haven't done nothing. I came to lend you some help, to help you along the line. And this is what kind of treatment I get. I'm really being appreciated, huh? Because they want something on the agenda, and they're still manipulating to get that. They're hoping you'll feel sorry for them. And, oh, poor baby, I know you've been mistreated. Let me help you out here. That's what we should be doing, helping them out. Right on out. Keep on out. Don't stop until they're gone. You cannot tolerate the Jezebel, okay? And as intercessors, you need to be praying for the vision of the pastor's vision of the church. When somebody else starts interjecting visions, let it be a red flag. When people in the congregation start saying, you know, I think this should be the vision of the church, or they start talking about going in a different direction than the church is going, let that be a red flag to you. You don't have to jump on their case. They might just be saying in innocence, but guard it. Think about it. Watch it. Yes?
Should it be the same in each ministry?
In each ministry as well.
It's founded.
If there's a founding ministry in the church, and all of a sudden that ministry is going in a different direction, you better be praying the pastor, senior pastor, or one of the associates put a stop to it, or hold it before it gets a chance to do any damage. Mm-hmm. The ministries are supposed to flow in the same direction of the vision of the church. See, what happens is divide and conquer. The Jezebel come in and work on a man and start putting down his wife. You know, your wife just doesn't appreciate you. She don't know you and understand you like you're supposed. She's putting a wedge in between you and her. And you'll do the same thing in the church. Start a ministry up, and all of a sudden the ministry's going along, and the Jezebel starts working on the person and saying, Pastor, I just don't understand. You got potential. You got a call from God. You're going to the nations. You're going to the nations. And next thing you know, you're heading in the opposite direction than the church is going, and now it's divide and conquer. It's beginning to isolate you. See, this is how witchcraft works. Isolate them, separate them, begin to manipulate them, get their mind on the same page that they're on, and get them to begin to follow suit. What you're doing is you're beginning to worship another God. Okay? It's serious business. It's serious stuff. The best relationship between the pastor and church intercessors occurs when the intercessors simply pray the vision of the senior pastor and leader. His responsibility is to lead. And the responsibility of the intercessors is to intercede. Let the leaders lead, and let the intercessors intercede. Simple. Isn't that something? Okay. The sense of direction and the purpose of the local churches or congregation is usually given to its founding pastors, what I was talking about earlier. Pastors may not be perfect. You may see imperfection. And that's okay, because the pastor sees imperfection in you. So, if everybody's seeing imperfection, we know we're all on the right page. We're headed and growing for perfection.
That's right.
We're striving for it. That's what the Bible teaches. Strive for perfection. Okay? Yes?
I think, in the day and time we're living in, especially because there's so much sin, people need pastors that don't appear perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Because when they're setting a standard that is a man's standard, there's a lot of people that just, they can't match that. And it just creates an atmosphere of failure for them in the physical, for a lot of young people too, it's like I'll never be able to fit that identity, But the physical identity is different than the spiritual, and